Angry Andy Reviews.
Angry Andy.
Angry Andy Reviews. Angry Andy Reviews. Angry Andy Reviews. Angry Andy Reviews.
Don't make me destroy you.
Hello and welcome to Angry Andy Reviews. So, I neglected to do a review on episode 3 of House of the Dragon, so this will be a very quick overview of episode 3 and 4 of House of the Dragon. I must say, episode 3 and especially 4 have been much better. We're really getting a sense of who the characters are, their purposes, but I think the main takeaway from me is the quality of performance so far in most of them. I'm really thinking mainly from Rhys Ifans, who plays the Hand of the King, Paddy Considine, obviously, who plays the King at the moment, and Matt Smith playing Daemon. Matt Smith in episode 3, I'm going to brush over a lot of what happened in episode 3. Suffice to say, it's an episode which sort of sets the stage for a bit of a wider conflict, and yet resolves that conflict almost immediately. So I do still have a bit of a bone of contention in terms of how quickly things are moving, time frames and whatever, but it's basically an episode where they're trying to get Rhaenyra to marry someone, and that carries over to episode 4 as well. But also in this episode we see a lot more characters struggling, you know, with what they've got to do and how they're going to do it. Paddy Considine is excellent in playing a king who's been pressured, who's losing his grip in certain respects. He just started drinking considerably. He's clearly in pain a lot of the time, and yet he's able to make certain decisions. One of which, you know, is to try and get Rhaenyra to marry someone. It doesn't work. He's a bit fucking angry about it. But again, he tells her that it's not his main purpose. But there's a bit of a bone of contention with that as well. But the main crux of the episode is the battle towards the end. Daemon receives word while he's still on the battlefield trying to capture this crab fiend king creature guy, which is hilarious. He receives word that his brother is going to send an entire army to assist him, and basically, like a petulant child, Daemon, without saying a single word, which is really superb, quite superb, he goes off and attacks the crab king guy, whatever his name is, forcing his hand, basically forcing him to release all the soldiers to come and get him, and then a huge battle ensues, and eventually they win the day. But what's great about the ending to that episode is specifically, like I said, Matt Smith doesn't say anything. It's all quality in acting. The show is actually smart enough to realise and recognise when, you know, nothing needs to be said. It's purely down to the actions of the character, and we get a fundamental sense of really who Daemon is at this point. He's somebody who will not, you know, not allow somebody else to do something. He will not allow himself to be overawed or overpowered, and he's ultimately decisive at this point. Whether that's because it could be one of two things: whether he knows that he can get victory alone, or whether he simply just doesn't want to have the weight of somebody else's victory on his shoulders, so the only way out is to possibly die in battle. found it quite interesting because there is a point when you realise that he can't win alone, and then his allies come and save him. But moving on to episode 4. Episode 4 is where things get a bit, like, even more darker. And I'm talking darker in terms of relationships. This episode, I briefly summarised to a friend as being Targaryens just want to have fun. Brackets, fun and fucking in King's Landing. And essentially that's what this episode is. It's the relationships between Rhaenyra, Daemon, Alicent, Rhaenyra's bodyguard, all of this, they're all intertwining, they're all meshing in between each other. And this is where the game will come, I think. And it does come to full force. There's copious amounts of incest in this episode, which is clearly a Game of Thrones staple. And it plays into the whole Targaryen history, I guess. Uncles and cousins and God knows what else. What I find difficult, though, is people simping about it on the internet. Really? I didn't know what simping was until this point, but having looked, Christ almighty. But coming away from that, coming away from the surface viewpoint on all that, the quality in performances is what is winning this show over, say, for example, the Rings of Power at this point. I'm not entirely convinced that the writing, or indeed the story, is fully there at the moment. However, I'm sold at every key moment based on those characters, because the actors are so invested in what they're doing. They know exactly the emotions they want to convey, they know how to do it, and they know the difficulty of the material as well. As you can see when they're playing these roles of, Daemon trying to woo Rhaenyra and then having to confront his own brother about that fact. You could see, the level of performance in there. There's a copious amount of depth to these characters. It's going to be interesting, again, when we see the time jump. Because I think episode 5 is the last time we see, is it Millie Alcock playing Rhaenyra? And then Rhaenyra grows up. So we're close to a massive time jump. Even though we've received copious amounts of time jumps already. And I'm absolutely struggling as to where the hell we are, how much time has passed between incidents. But yeah, the performances are winning the day, 100%. We're seeing a very slow decline of Paddy Considine's king. There are visual clues as to the state of his health. We've already seen him without his fingers. In this episode, we see, what look like bruising and other sort of ailments across his body. So there are plenty of visual cues there. And also, there's some more scheming. So not everything goes right for the hand of the king, Rhys Ifans' character. It all falls apart purely because of this incident involving Rhaenyra and Daemon. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes of that and where we go from there. I'm assuming episode 5 is going to feel like some kind of a mid-season finale. If we're due a cast change of a few members of the cast, if we're due like a small cast change, then I'm assuming, we're gonna feel that. We're gonna see that. We're gonna feel what's gonna be like a mid-season finale. But at the moment, I think it's doing well. I think it's doing well, and I think it's keeping me engaged, and possibly, other members of the audience. It's keeping them engaged purely by the virtue of how strong the characters are. How much they're doing with the source material, how much they're doing with, the script. how much better they're making it, because like I said, I don't think it's all there. I don't think the story is there either at the moment. But we'll see. We'll see what we get with episode 5. Anyway, I think episode 3 was most definitely an 8, I think, because it was much better. And I would agree with this episode as well, to be fair, as an 8 out of 10. So there is improvements there, most definitely. So I'm going to stick with an 8 for both of these episodes. 8 out of 10. And I'm eager to see what happens in episode 5. But for the moment, I'm going to leave it there. So goodbye.